In this episode, I get to speak with Leah Miller, a paralegal gone rogue. During her paralegal career, she quickly discovered her passion for finances. Although for some this topic might not be that interesting, it is one of the most important. Listen in for more. Before we get into this episode, we would like to thank our Season 4 sponsor, Affirm Investigative Solutions, your go-to litigation support company. Without them, we would not be able to keep upgrading and integrating new concepts to this growing podcast. If you would like to take your support further, feel free to hit the support button on our Let's Talk Paralegal website so we can continue providing quality and empowering content for you and all our listeners. Welcome, everybody, to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I'm your host, Ada Rosa, and today I bring you the amazing Leah Miller. We're actually going to be talking about a topic maybe not so common for our fellow paralegals and legal support staff in general. One, because you may not be in this niche. Two, because you may not actually have any sorts of interactions aside from the settlement portions of the cases, if that's what you are litigating for. But we're going to be talking about finances, how that affects the paralegals, and how Leah has brought this topic to us. So Leah, without further ado, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your story.
Okay, so my name's Leah Miller. I started out as a paralegal. I worked in a bankruptcy law firm for 2 years while I was getting my degree in paralegal studies, and then I wanted to branch out into other practice areas, and I had asked one of my professors during school how long was too long in one practice area, and she was like, you really don't want to stay in one practice area for more than 2 to 3 years. It's hard to switch. And I was like, okay, then I need to get out, because I knew I didn't want to do bankruptcy forever. And I really wanted to get into personal injury. It's just something that always interests me. So I started looking for another job somewhere else. And I initially was hired at a Social Security disability firm. They did a little bit of personal injury. So I was like, okay, this is good. It'll get me moving. And I put in my 2 weeks notice. And about a week before I was supposed to start there, I got a call from a girl that I knew from my paralegal classes. And she said, are you looking for a job? And I was like, I don't know, I might be. Where? And it was at a personal injury law firm in town that had been around for years and years and years. So I said, yes, let me interview for that. So I interviewed for the job, was offered the job. It was actually a little bit less money than the Social Security firm. But it's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into personal injury. So I just knew, like, I just needed my foot in the door. It's hard to get into that practice area. Every time I tried to apply for personal injury, it's like, you need experience. So I was like, this is what I'm going to do. So I started working for that personal injury firm. I was doing litigation, discovery, scheduling, things like that. And I knew in the future, like talking, 10, 15 years in the future, I would want to be office manager one day of a law firm. So I was always talking to our office manager and just kind of learning everything there was to learn in the firm. And about a year later, our office manager left unexpectedly. And so my boss at the time, I was like, I can do this. I can be the office manager. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, yes, I swear I can do it. I can do that. I can still do my litigation stuff. Like, I know that I can be the office manager. So bless his heart, he gave me a chance. Our accountant came and gave me a crash course in QuickBooks and payroll. And that's how I became the firm administrator of this personal injury law firm. So that was in 2015. And that's what I did. During that time, I finished my bachelor's degree in supervision and management. And then I went back to school to get my MBA, just because I like school and business and wanted to learn a little bit more about it. During that time, I continued as a litigation paralegal, as a Florida registered paralegal. I did a lot of trial prep work, kind of got away from the day-to-day scheduling and just got into the bigger cases and things like that. Managed pre-suit, in-suit, just managed everything in the office. And so that's what I did up until this year. And then I started a side business doing bookkeeping and financial consulting. And I really did think it was just going to be a side business of something that I was going to do for a while.
Nope.
And no, did not work that way. So we actually were hit by the hurricane back in September and our office flooded. And so I was home working from home for a while. And then we got a new office, and my commute was about 45 minutes to an hour long after that. And after all that time working from home, and then all that time working from home back during COVID, I was like, I really just, I don't want to drive to the office anymore. And so my side business had been picking up, and I was doing financial consulting and bookkeeping primarily for law firms. And so I gave my notice back in May, and that's when I stopped being the firm administrator. I did have to give up my Florida registered paralegal because I wasn't a practicing paralegal anymore. I was a little sad about that, but Florida bar rules, you have to be practicing to have it. So I'm no longer a Florida registered paralegal, but I do have my degree in paralegal studies. And I'll always have a passion for the paralegal field. I like to go back to the college and talk to the classes there that my old professors teach, and just really pour into paralegals because I've always enjoyed, training them and helping them in their careers. So that's kind of how I started as paralegal and worked my way up to firm administrator. And now I'm doing financial consulting for law firms.
Okay, so I had to ask, what
Yeah.
got you into financial consulting?
I have just always loved numbers and things like that. And so I was the CFO of the law firm. Like that's kind of how I
Oh,
worked up my title. And after I got my MBA. And so that's kind of how I got into that. And I've just always loved numbers. And I've always been very conscious, even as just as a paralegal when I first started, very conscious of the costs for the clients, costs for the firm, like even office supplies and things like that. It adds up,
oh
and
yeah.
that takes away from the money that can be given to everybody else in the office. And so I've always been very cost conscious, and thinking about those things even before I had the role of office administrator and all of that.
I love that. I really do. So, talk a little bit about the financial aspects of a law firm, right? Because now more than ever, you are immersed in it. And you said just now that you were always like that, that it was just something natural. You might be like that in your personal life, because I know I nickel and dime everything so that I can enjoy my hobbies, because that's who I am in a nutshell. So maybe that translated to your professional life as well. But I'm not the one to tell this. So go ahead, Leah. Let us know.
So I think law firms, they're really different when it comes to small businesses. One, they're run by attorneys. All law firms are owned and run by attorneys most of the
Yeah.
time. And they're very smart people, but they don't have necessarily the business acumen. They don't have the business experience and things like that. And so they're not always entrepreneurs, to the true sense as other small business owners may be. So that's one of the aspects of financials when it comes to a law firm, is they have to be run by attorneys who just may not have the experience and the education when it comes to that. And then another aspect of it is the way that the revenue comes in for law firms. And I think this is where it really comes, the paralegals have something to do with this, is in a personal injury law firm, you're bringing in a case today, you're not seeing revenue from that for 12 to 18 months because
Mm.
there's a lag of time. Whereas if you're in a different industry and you're having cash flow issues, you can just go out and, get some money and do some work and get what you need to do, sell a product, whatever it may be. And so there's that aspect of working in a law firm as well, and just being cost conscious, and being conscious of how long it's taking to move that case through. So even if you're not in personal injury, if you're in estate planning, family law, things like that, sometimes there's a lag for how long it takes a case to move through. And I, even as a paralegal, I was aware of that, aware of, if we're not doing our work, one, we're not doing work for the clients, which obviously like their priority always, but we're delaying the revenue coming into the office, and
Yeah.
that could cause problems down the road. Like I never wanted to lose my job or anything like that because of cash flow issues. So I've always kind of been conscious of that when it's come to thinking about law firms in a business, in a business sense.
And for those paralegals that are used to that, right, because they review the settlement agreements and the settlement factors, it depends on what state you're in. They all have different names for the same document. It's what I'm talking about is, or what I'm referring to is the breakdown of the
Mm-hmm.
case, right? How much the attorney's fees are, the costs that come with it. Unless there was a retainer and you're billing hourly, we all know those billable hours. My goodness. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yes.
But I have literally I've created an entire course for the Broward College, and I've also created a training just on billable hours because of how important it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are advocating against it, right? They're trying to get rid of the billable hour just because of the stress and you name it. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's plenty of elements as to why to get rid of it, but at the end of the day, how is the attorney going to make money? I mean, there's just no other way. The retainer is only going to take you so far. And if you're expecting the attorney to do everything, well, that's just an unrealistic expectation. So there has to be somewhat of a happy median in between. So yeah, but that again, that's not my call. And that's
Well, and
definitely not my place.
there is a push going towards flat fee, and I
Yeah.
can see the argument for it. And it definitely could be more profitable because you're talking about like value billing and things like that. I know that gets debated a lot. Does it really take you that long to do something, or are you streamlining it? But I think everybody still needs to be conscious of the hours it takes them to do those things. Like I know some of my clients who are billing on a flat fee, they're still asking their paralegals to track hours because you need to make sure one, you're charging enough for the flat fee, two, the paralegal is doing the work that needs to be done in a timely, fashion and things like that. So I can see both sides of the argument for the billable hour and the flat fee and all of that. Billable hours are not my favorite thing to
No, nobody's
track.
favorite,
It's
especially
nobody's
paralegals.
favorite. Yes.
I
Yes.
do this in my consulting as well. I always tell the attorneys, even regardless if they're billable or not, to have the paralegal track it, especially in a remote setting, right?
Hmm.
One, you want to make sure your work is getting done effectively. Two, you want to see really, like you said, how long is it really actually taking them versus sometimes we're like, oh, it'll only take me 5 minutes. That's not necessarily
Yeah.
true because you're reviewing the case, you're making sure that the document's correct, you're editing your grammar, your spelling, your format. That's not going to take you, regardless if it's a template and all you hit is merge. You have to make sure there's no grammar, spelling, you're in the right case. Has anything new been filed ever since then before you go on and file a motion to compel or an extension? The whole 9 yards, right? So nothing in law takes you 5 minutes.
No.
Sorry, not even an email because you got to figure out who the email is from. You have to, find out what are they talking about, what matter, who are they in what party are they? It does not take you 5 minutes.
Yep.
Nothing in my life has ever taken me 5 minutes. Like it's just,
Exactly.
like time yourself. You'll see, there's plenty of software out there that you can do it on your own. Like I tell this to my paralegals that are transitioning to be freelancers and contract workers. That's the first thing you have to do. How do you
Hmm.
know how to price your services if you don't even know how long it's actually going to take you? And now you have to think about overhead costs, right?
Yep.
How much was the law firm paying between your laptop, software, any other materials that you utilize on a day-to-day basis, a phone, electricity, internet, all that you are paying ahead of time. So you
Yep.
have to put everything into consideration when you are doing your services, your pricing for your services. And another thing, guys, just a nice little free tip here. Actually know what services you're going to provide. Because I know a lot of people are like, I'm just going to do everything that I did at the law firm. And I'm like, really? You're going to answer calls on your cell phone? You're going to do that? Like,
Yep.
is that really what you're asking for?
Well, and I think that goes back to what you originally said in the intro is maybe the paralegals don't have a lot to do with the financial aspect. And so it's, out of the realm of what they normally think about. But I think it's beneficial for it to kind of be in the back of all the paralegals' minds when you're in a law firm, because one, like I said, the more that there's profit, hopefully you're working for somebody who's amazing, who shares in that profit. I know that that's not always the case, but maybe you need to reevaluate something else.
Well, there you go.
And like you said, if your goal is eventually to do some freelancing or things like that, is as you're working, be aware of what everything around you costs money. That comes from the attorney's profit. So, people are like, they make so much money, they, bring in so much revenue, and they do, but I don't think people on a day-to-day basis really think about what it costs to have an employee and to keep you sitting at your desk and all of that. And so I think because you don't know where your goals are going to change down the road, it's a good thing to be aware of what the cost is to what you're doing, from operation costs, case costs, because that's really important, things like that. And so just keeping the financials in your mind, I think could be beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, I usually give my students and my coaching paralegals a project, and the project is a profit and loss statement. And I want them to do it both for their personal and their professional, regardless if they're 9 to 5 or they're freelance. I know obviously it's easier when you're a freelancer, but it's just to get the wheels turning and it's to actually see the numbers. Another thing, and maybe you can touch upon this, and that kind of goes into our other segment, is how it affects the paralegal, right? Which we kind of touched upon, throughout the conversation, but we're going to kind of summarize it here. But another thing is that we're so afraid of finances,
Mhm.
right? Some of us have this mental minds or this mindset about money. We're afraid to look at our bank accounts. We're afraid to, do the word budget, like everybody cringes. Oh my God, I can't do anything. And it's like, no, it's the complete opposite. It allows you the freedom to spend on the things that you love. I love the quote from Dave Ramsey, even though I'm not like a diehard Christian, but I do follow him and Christy Wright. And I love the quote, says you can tell a lot about a person by their finances and their calendar, their bank account and their calendar. And really, that is honestly true. You guys have control of both your bank account and your calendar. You have to set boundaries. You have to, bite your tongue sometimes and say, you know what? Do I really need that Starbucks coffee? Although I love Starbucks, love you guys.
Love
I
it.
even co-branded with them, so nothing against Starbucks, but sometimes you have to say no to that $5, $10 cup of coffee or tea or whatever drink you use at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Do I really need to go to this out for a restaurant every night, even though I don't know how to cook? Maybe I can get those, meal preps or something home or something like that. Like really start looking at your lifestyle. And I think that's what finances does. It allows you that freedom to really evaluate, like you were saying, the entire spectrum of not only your professional, but also your personal, where your dime goes every day.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of fear around finances because it's not something that everybody understands, and it looks scary, even the profit and loss. I mean, if you have a business and you look at a profit and loss, you're like, oh, and there, I mean, there's attorneys and stuff that, or business owners that never look at that. If there's cash in the bank, there's cash in the bank. That's all they care about. And so that's where I get in like, no, we need to break it down. We need to really look at it. But from a paralegal standpoint, it's not something to be afraid of. You should be aware of it. And I like how you touched on the personal stuff, as well as if they are freelance or if they're in the business and they're working for somebody else. I know there's a big push for like taking that ownership of the business you're working for and really thinking about it, because that can lead to opportunities down the road for you. Everybody's watching, everybody knows what you're doing. And if you really take that ownership and you work hard, you will be rewarded, whether it's by the person you're working for or having more opportunities down the road to work for somebody else that may treat you in a better way. And then as you were talking about the personal finances, it was really, I was thinking that it's good to have a handle on that, especially as a paralegal, because while I love the legal field and I will always be passionate about it, it is a very high stress environment. And I love attorneys, but they are also very high stress. And so I would hate for anybody to ever be stuck, feel that they are stuck in a firm or working for somebody that they are not finding joy in, because I
Mhm.
think that there are so many opportunities for paralegals today to have joy in what they do and feel fulfilled in their daily work. But if you're not aware of your personal finances, then you find yourself stuck because there are people who will pay you a lot of money and treat you bad. And so you feel like you're stuck in that place and you have nowhere else to go. And if you're more aware and you don't have that fear surrounding your finances, then you can take those skills you have, because I'm sure, paralegals who are thinking that way, they have the skills, they're awesome, they deserve to go other places. And so you're able to make that jump, make that leap, take those chances that are scary, because I trust me, I know how it felt to be in the same place for over 10 years. It was comfortable, and I
Mhm.
wasn't dealing with, abuse or anything like that in the workplace, but it was scary to take that jump and do what's better for my family. But having a good understanding of your finances and not being scared of those, that, from a personal finance standpoint, really makes a difference as well.
Oh, absolutely. Fear 9 times out of 10 is what prevents you from jumping your own obstacles.
Yeah.
I always say that. And I referred to a situation in my Let's Talk Paralegal book about that, about how we like to build our own obstacles, right? Oh, well, you can come up with every excuse in the world, but at the end of the day, you have control of yourself, right? You may not have control of other things. You may not have control of your raises or anything like that, but you can definitely advocate for it. You can definitely, the promotion's not just going to get handed to you. You have to
Mm-hmm.
ask for it. Like Leah was talking about earlier. She's like, well, the office manager left, and I was like, well, I can do this. Why not?
Yeah.
She went up, spoke to them, and look at that. She was the office manager. So understanding that opportunities are not brought to you, you have to go to those opportunities. So whatever it is that you're trying to do in order to accomplish, grow your career, you also have to grow yourself, and you also have to get not over the fear, because I feel like you just, a lot of sayings, right, come up to my head right now, but the most common is do it scared, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the most popular that I've heard. And sometimes it's not true. If you're looking at the Brene Brown concept, it's more about courage. That's the difference between fear and courage. You just have the courage to continue and move forward. So there's a big difference between fear and courage. You're not doing it scared, you're just courageous enough to move.
Yep.
And that's really the big difference. And I want you guys to start changing the way you speak, the way you think about yourself, the way you think about your current situation. I know a lot of my audience is in a pivotal moment right now, whether it's trying to get out of a situation, trying to get into a new one, trying to open up and their horizons and spread their wings. Whatever the reason is that brought you to this podcast, I want you to know that we know. We've been there. We've jumped the obstacles. We've removed them. We've done whatever we could, and we did not do it scared. We were just courageous enough to move
I
forward.
think there's also fear sometimes around having a lot of money
Ah,
and the potential to have more money,
mm,
where, especially as a paralegal, you may be thinking, well, this is just what paralegals make. There's
mm,
nothing more, that's what I am entitled to. That's all I need. Whereas, like, there's so much more you can do. And I think, like, my story shows, like, I wasn't content with just what I was doing. And if you are content, that's fine. I'm not saying that everybody has to reach, a certain point, but don't ever be scared of knowing that you can reach for more, you can do more, you can make more money than you ever thought you would make when you were first starting out. And I think there's a lot of fear that surrounds that as well,
mm.
because money is such a taboo subject. And so it's just not talked about at all.
Yeah.
But I think paralegals, they can do that. They can do whatever they want to do, and not be scared of doing that.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And on that note, I want to welcome you and thank you for coming on
thank
to the
you.
Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I know your time is precious and your billable hours are high. No, I'm just kidding. So thank you for taking the
No
time to
problem. Thanks
be
for having
on
me.
here. And until justice is served, everyone, I'll be here. Bye.
Bye.